Hey, how you doing? I'm Brad Taylor, and there's obviously been a lot of activity in the Middle East with Iran, military activity, and I've gotten quite a few comments and questions about what's going on, so I thought I'd make a video and explain what I think's going on. This is going to be a little longer than normal because it's kind of a complex topic, but I'm going to talk about this like an alien looking down from outer space with no skin in the game. Someone who understands the complexity and the history of what's going on, but I don't care about the politics. I'm simply going to explore why we're here and what the potential outcomes are as an analyst, not as a partisan. The first question usually get asked is, why now? Why are we attacking Iran? Well, by U.S. law, and I'm not going to touch on international law, that's somebody else can deal with that. But by U.S. law, the president can introduce forces for hostilities for two reasons. Number one, Congress either declares war or creates authorization for military force. Or number two, there's an imminent threat that has to be dealt with immediately. Now, number one means the president has free reign to do what he wants. He's got the authorization of military force, or they declare war. He's got full reign to go. Number two, the imminent threat, he's doing that because he doesn't have time to go get an AUMF or declare war. Things so imminent, he's got to do it right now. But in that case, it triggers a war power resolution, and that gives the president 60 days to either solve the problem or, theoretically, according to the resolution. It happened so quick he had to do it. Now he goes back to Congress, gets the resolution, and we go forward. So there's a 60-day clock on that. In this specific case, the Trump administration made no attempt to get Congress on board, made no attempt to talk to the American people. He went with the imminent threat route. Said that it's an imminent threat from Iran, and we had to do it immediately, or something bad was going to happen. The threat really isn't clear at this point. The first thing was it was nuclear weapons, which we were actually negotiating with the Iranians over their nuclear program when we attacked, but that doesn't measure up because we did Midnight Hammer last summer, where even to the White House's own proclamations, we obliterated their nuclear program. So it's kind of hard to rectify that from last summer to right now, 6 months later, they're on the cusp of a nuclear bomb so quickly that we needed to wipe them out. 2 days ago, they settled on a different imminent position, which is literally kind of a self-licking ice cream cone. They basically said, both Trump and Secretary of State Rubio said that Israel was hell-bent on attacking Iran. There's nothing we could do about it. They were going to go in. They told us they were going to go in. And we knew that if they went ahead and attacked Iran, then Iran was going to attack us, attack Israel and attack us if Israel attacked them. Therefore, to prevent Iran from attacking us because Israel was attacking them, we joined to attack them first to stop that imminent threat. This is suspect for a couple of reasons. One, Iran doesn't do anything without U.S. permission when in something like this. Before they hit Iran, before the last summer, they came to us and we said, yes, go ahead and do it. If we really, really didn't want them to attack Iran, if we really thought it was going to cause us to get struck and we did not want to attack Iran in retaliation, we just said, don't do it. Number two, last summer kind of proves the case. Israel, we gave them permission. They did attack Iran. They blew up Iran for 2 weeks before we did Midnight Hammer, and Iran never struck back at us. Iran only fired missiles at Al-Udeid Air Base because we did Midnight Hammer. So neither one of those reasons really holds scrutiny for the whole imminent thing, not the nuclear capability or the imminent missile threat. So why now? Why are we attacking Israel now? At a press conference, Hexas said this wasn't going to be another Iraq, but at least it's starting to look a little bit exactly like that. When we went into Iraq in 2003, Bush used WMD. They had a weapons of mass destruction. They weren't giving up their program. They're an imminent threat. We got to get rid of them. He used that to go in, but his ultimate goal was overthrowing the Saddam regime to pave the way for a democratic government in Iraq, which in theory would flow throughout the Middle East and thereby staunch the overarching threat of Islamic terrorism. Terrorism wouldn't breed in democracy. If you had democracies everywhere instead of these despots that are ruling these countries, terrorism wouldn't breed, and this is a way to fight Islamic terrorism on a huge strategic level. That was a lofty goal. Actually, I think it's a worthy goal. Unfortunately, it was also doomed and never really had a chance to succeed. we're kind of seeing that. So he used WMD. He had this, here's what I want to do, but I can't sell that. So I'm going to say it's WMD. And we went in that way. He fully did. And by the way, I think he thought we had WMD. He was kind of surprised when there wasn't any there. But the WMD was just justification to install democracy in Iraq. What we're seeing here is basically the same thing. The administration wants to get rid of the Iranian regime. And together with Israel, they're now contorting themselves into why it had to happen now. The ultimate goal is to get rid of the regime, but then they're trying to come up with a reason of why they had to do it at this moment. I wish they'd just come out and talk to the American people, because the answer is pretty simple. Iran is incredibly weak right now. Their proxies, Hezbollah has been neutralized, Hamas has been devastated, the Houthis are on their back feet. Their regional partner, Syria, was their huge partner, Alawite Shia state above Lebanon, was used as a land bridge to fund Hezbollah and Hamas and provide them with missiles and everything else. They're gone. The guy that runs Syria now is a Sunni, used to be a terrorist who hates Iran, so they've lost that too. Basically, and then we hit them with the Midnight Hammer and the Israeli strikes from before, wiped out their ADA defenses, wiped out a lot of their ballistic missiles. Basically, Iran is on the back foot. I mean, they're just sitting there in the back foot, punch drunk, and I mean, it's kind of like the old Mortal Kombat game. He's sitting there doing this, and Israel's like, finish him! So if the nadir was like right here, here's where Iran, if he did nothing, Iran's going to go up like this. And they're going to rebuild their missiles. They're going to start their nuclear program. They're going to refund the proxies. They're going to help them reestablish themselves. And we'll be back 3 years ago when Iran was kingpin of doing that stuff. And make no mistake, there's no doubt the Iranian regime is the epicenter of evil in the Middle East. And almost the epicenter of evil, if you compared them to anywhere else in the world, they're right up there as the baddest thing in the world. One of the worst on planet Earth. They've been causing trouble. When I say trouble, I mean death and destruction in just about every country in the region, from Iraq through Lebanon to Yemen, and killing Americans since 1979. Having that ethos and fanaticism gone would most definitely be in the interest of the United States, Europe, the Gulf states, and, of course, Israel. Getting rid of them is a noble cause. Got no issue with it whatsoever. The key point here is having that ethos and fanaticism gone. And that's what regime change is all about. When you replace a combative regime with one that's more amenable. It's what we did in World War II. We went into, we're going to destroy the Axis powers. We go into Germany, get rid of them. We looked at that and said, why did we get into World War II? Well, it's because of World War I. After the Versailles Treaty, Germany was treated so horrible, this bad thing came up. We're not going to let that happen again. So we restabilized the country, had them create a democracy, stayed there as long as it took. Japan the same way. They were fanatical nationalists. We obviously smoked Japan. We didn't just leave the atomic craters and move out, leaving Japan to fester in their own misery about how they hate America. We stayed there, built it back up, got a new regime. Now Japan's one of our staunchest allies instead of letting it turn into a cesspool. In a more modern time, it's what we did in Panama on Just Cause. We went in, took out Noriega, took out the Panamanian Defense Forces, installed democracy, stayed there, let it go, and now they're doing just fine. It's unfortunately also what we tried to do and failed to do in Iraq and Afghanistan. I hear everyone asking whether this is a regime change or not, and that's the boogeyman of the day, no such thing as nation building. Hegseth emphatically says this is not regime change. Every time somebody gets on TV, they say it's not regime change. And mainly, because, the administration that did Iraq was stupid. The new administration is not stupid. We're not doing regime change. And, I actually think he's correct. This isn't regime change because we have no intention of doing anything after this regime is gone. I think a new term needs to be coined. I'll coin it right now. There's no such thing as regime change here. It's regime destruction, pure and simple. The problem with regime destruction is it completely ignores the strategic goal of the campaign. Namely, the current regime is replaced by something that's more amenable and less belligerent than the previous one. In Iran, we have absolutely no idea what that will be. And it honestly seems to me that Hegseth learned the wrong lessons from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, the true lesson to learn is that regime change is incredibly hard, requires enormous resources and time. I mean, think the Marshall Plan for World War II, in order to achieve a desirable outcome. To the prior administration's credit, in both Iraq and Afghanistan, we recognized this and tried. We failed, but it wasn't because we didn't recognize it was needed. The true lesson is that if you're going to go to war to change a regime, you'd better make damn sure you understand and appreciate the challenges and effort required. If you're not prepared to go all the way and do regime change, then don't go to war. Just don't do it. What Hegseth apparently learned was not that whether the cost of war to achieve a political aim is worth it, but that the shock and awe part of the campaign is the end state. You just stop right there, regardless whether you attain your strategic end state or not. In essence, the military objectives are the total objectives, and that's when you call it a win. It's almost like he's a brand new contractor and he's going to start building residential houses, and he looks at what's the biggest problem with residential houses, and he says, well, it's a roof. You get on the roof, people fall off the roof. That's what a roof, people get injured. The insurance rates skyrocket. I'm going to make more money. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to frame the house, put the foundation in the house, but I'm not building a roof. That'll save some money. Well, you don't have a house at the end of that. You haven't reached your strategic end state. And I think that's kind of what he's looking at here. In any campaign, you have linkages from strategic through the operational to the tactical. In World War II, the strategic goal was to remove Nazi Germany. Operationally, we're going to use resistance fighters in the rear. We're going to drop paratroopers behind the lines, and we're going to invade the coast of France. Tactically, the guy on the boat riding into Normandy in the boat with his weapon, that's the tactical end of it. So it's strategic through operational to tactical. In Iran, I don't really see a linkage to an overarching strategy. Operationally, we're synchronizing air power throughout the depth of Iran, and tactically, there are sorters that are flying to specific targets and blowing things up. But what's the end state? I hear it's simply to destroy their ballistic missiles, destroy their navy, destroy their nuclear capability. But that's all operational art, designed for some unnamed strategic goal. If we leave it there, are we going to do this a year from now? Because you're just blowing up things that they can rebuild. Are we going to do this year after year? The only way to prevent those fanatics from rebuilding and conducting Operation Epic Fury 2 is to remove the fanatics from the equation, which brings up regime change. But the problem with regime change is it doesn't guarantee that you remove the fanatics. And that's the problem with regime destruction. You have absolutely no idea what's going to come behind it. What you get could be worse. And it's an extremely ironic example. The very reason we are right now bombing Iran is precisely because we conducted regime change in Iran in 1953. We took out a duly elected prime minister. His name was Mossadegh. We got rid of him. We thought he was anti-American, so just get rid of that government. We installed the Shah of Iran, who was pro-American, but he was also a tyrannical despot who put the boot to his people. But he was our despot, so that was okay. Well, it wasn't okay to the Iranian people, and from 53 to 79, he got worse and worse. And in 79, the Ayatollah Khomeini's fanatics took over Iran, and here we are today. We also have a history of regime destruction. Gaddafi in Libya was a tyrant, a despot, and he had armed opposition. Unlike what's in Iran right now, he actually had an armed opposition that was fighting him. And we said, hey, we're going to help the armed opposition. Even though we have no idea who they are, we don't like Gaddafi. So we used air power, gave the opposition air cover. They took over Libya, and we said, woohoo, we won. In Clinton's famous words, we came, we saw, he died. Yay! And we turned our back on Libya. It devolved into a massive civil war, a failed state, a terrorist mecca, you name it. The armories were looted, everything went to pieces. And 2 years after we did all that, we got Benghazi. Everyone blames the Obama administration for not doing enough to help Benghazi and the consulate over there, 13 hours of movie and all that. It's all the administration's fault. I do blame the administration. My blame's different. They never should have destroyed the regime without any plan to succeed it. If you're going to do that, then you better have a plan to follow up, or you're going to get Benghazi. Having said all that, right now, do I think this current action, what we're doing, will that result in regime destruction? I see two possible ways that this could occur. Number one, the regime eventually crumbles under the air power onslaught. We just keep bombing and they fall apart. This outcome is very, very, very unlikely. And in fact, it has never happened in the history of the Earth. It's almost impossible to cause a fall regime through air power alone. As one of the only examples there is, in Vietnam, we dropped more ordnance on North Vietnam during that war than all the belligerents in World War II combined. That's how many bombs we dropped on North Vietnam. They never fell. In fact, they never quit fighting. In fact, they ended up winning the war. Coupled with that, air power alone can't do this, but coupled with that is the pure asymmetry of the willpower fight we're facing here. Much like North Vietnam. If we quit this fight tomorrow, the skin in the game for Americans is the American population wakes up and doesn't hear about bombs dropping, and the price of oil stabilizes. They have no skin in the game whatsoever as seeing this as necessary. On the other hand, if the regime quits, if the regime sides folds up and says we're done, they're literally dead. They have every reason to fight to the last man. For us, it's bitching about the price of gas. For them, it's an existential threat. The willpower asymmetry is very different there. Basically, this is their strategic goal. Our strategic goal is, all these various things we seem to focus on each day. Their strategic goal is simply survival. And their whole bet is they can outlast the U.S. and Israel by applying pressure through their own missiles. They keep shooting the missiles. We keep trying to stop shooting the missiles. It's a race to see whose willpower is going to stop sooner. And they might be right. They might win that fight. All it would take is one lucky strike on a mess hall in, say, Iraq, and we got 50 soldiers eating dinner and a missile comes in and kills every one of them. We would definitely hear an outcry, hey, what are we doing? Let's get out of Iran. This is not worth it. Iran can assume much more punishment than we can. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s, depending on what statistic you want to believe, they lost between 300,000 and 500,000 soldiers fighting Iraq. That's equivalent to what we lost in World War II. They can take a pounding and keep on humming. Their whole bet is, we could kill 500 Iranians. They kill 5 Americans. We get upset about that. We kill 500 Iranians. They kill 5 Americans. You rinse and repeat that enough, and their bet is we'll quit before they do. The only key to that strategy, only weakness to that strategy is they might run out of missiles. If they run out of things to shoot, then they're really in trouble. There's nothing else they can do. And we're doing everything we can to make that happen, that they simply run out of things to fire at us, in which case their strategy is going to be bankrupt. Okay, the second way this could happen is if the air power alone doesn't crush them immediately, the people may rise up and overthrow the regime. This is clearly what Trump wanted when he first announced the invasion. Even though they're saying it's not a regime change, he specifically said, rise up and change the regime. This too is unlikely to happen. After the first Gulf War, George H. Bush said, H.W. Bush, told the people we didn't go on to Baghdad after the first Gulf War and kind of made everybody mad. So he told the people in Iraq, rise up, overthrow Saddam Hussein. Well, they did rise up, and they all got slaughtered because we did nothing to help them. We had no boots on the ground. The Iranians who follow that lead will meet the same fate. The IRGC has a monopoly of violence in this country. They have all the guns. There's nowhere for these guys. You're not going to fight the IRGC with your fists. In Libya, there was, like I mentioned before, there was already an armed opposition when we helped overthrow Gaddafi. There's nothing like this here. The regime has all the guns and a healthy reason to use them. We had the protests last month, and they were killing a lot of people, but they weren't doing outright slaughter. There was a lot of death, don't get me wrong, but they weren't doing a lot of outright slaughter because the world population was kind of looking at them. Even if the clamp down on the internet and everything else, things were getting out. So they couldn't just outright kill everybody. Well, make no mistake, if it's between their death or the protesters, they're going to kill the protesters. They'll worry about popular opinion after they've stopped the uprising, and they have the guns to do it. So it's kind of a loose bet to say that people are going to run up and take it all over. And as a matter of fact, the fact that we've said there's not going to be any boots on the ground, we've kind of given them the leeway to do this because they have an entire army that's arrayed to defend the country from an invasion. All their guns are aimed out. Oh, you're not going to invade? Well, now all their guns are aimed in. Is there anybody out here who looks like they're going to do something against the regime? They can go shoot them. And speaking of boots on the ground, I see TV, this is a side note, I see people on TV all the time talking, mission creep. Trump says, I haven't kicked out using boots on the ground. If I think I need it, I'll use it. And then Democrats are like, oh my God, we're going to put soldiers in harm's way. Just for anybody listening, there will never be boots on the ground in Iran. It's just not going to happen for the simple reason that it's going to take too long. It took us 2 months just to get the naval air power in place to do this. It'll take at least 6 months We're not going to send just a battalion of the 82nd into Iran. It's going to be an overwhelming invasion force, and that'll take at least a half a year to get, if not longer, to get together, to get the combat power over there to do this. You'll just see, months of people streaming over there. You can't just click your finger and say, time for boots on the ground. And the reason I say there will never, ever be boots on the ground is because the War Powers Resolution will end way before we have any kind of combat power to put it in. So right now, it doesn't matter what anybody says, even Trump. If he says, I'm putting boots on the ground, he's not. In 60 days, War Powers is done, and he's done. Anyway, that's a whole side note. I mean, there might be some soft strikes here and there, but when we talk, an invasion force, that's just not happening. Okay, anyway, so there are two ways I do see that the population could rise up and take over the government. One, part of the regime turns against itself. If some battalion or other decide it was time to overthrow a regime, if they're sitting there looking at the missiles flying and saying the mullahs have got a suicide pact and don't want to be a part of that suicide pact, and they turn against the regime, they do have guns, they have arms, they could outfit people. It could be the spark that would start a revolution. One thing about Iran that most people aren't aware of, I don't think, because I hear people talking, it seems to confuse things. You have the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They started out as the bodyguards of the Ayatollah Khomeini. They've since expanded until they have their own army. They run the ballistic missile program. They run the nuclear program, aerospace program. They have their own. They have the Quds force that runs around creating mayhem everywhere. Soleimani, the guy we assassinated, was part of the IRGC. They're the ones that run Iran. They run just about everything in Iran, and they are fanatics. You're not going to get them to turn against anybody. They're the fanatics. But on the other side, the actual Iranian army are a bunch of conscripts. They have a huge army, one of the largest standing armies in the Middle East. They're just normal folks that have to go join the army and do their thing. Those guys have guns as well, and that could be somebody who turns against them. I mean, they could be sitting there. They're not religious fanatics. They just happen to be an army guy that got drafted. And they could say, okay, this is crazy. I'm going to go against them. That would cause a spark for an overthrow. Now, the reason I say this won't happen is Iran is one of the few regimes in existence that came to being by overthrowing by force of arms the previous regime. And they did that precisely because Shah's security apparatus turned against the Shah. And Shah's security apparatus stood aside and let the fanatics take over. They full well understand the dangers of that, and the IRGC right now is keeping an eye on anybody that has a gun. If any of those guys show any disloyalty, they're going to kill them. So that thought is out there, but I think that the Iranians realize that just as much as we do, and they'll put a stop to it. Two, another way they could have a popular uprising is if there was somebody else who created the spark. Now, say we arm the Kurds in the north or one of the other minorities. So Iran is 60% Persian and 40% minority. Kurds, Yazidis, Christians, you name it. There's 40% of them minorities, and they get treated worse than the Iranian population, so they have absolutely no love of the regime. So if we armed and outfitted the Kurds and said, hey, you need to go down there and create some havoc, and they, had some limited success here and there, took over an armory, say, looted it full of weapons, that could create a spark for an overthrow, that the regime would fall. That's the second way I could see this happening. And I'm sure we're up there doing something. I mean, I'd be flabbergasted if we weren't talking to all these people saying, hey, come on, man, get your butt down there and take it to the regime. Here's some weapons. Here's some money. Go make it happen. I'm pretty sure we're doing that. What I don't know, are we doing this for some kind of strategic end state, or are we now just throwing shit against the wall to see what will stick? The main problem with the Kurds or any of the minorities is they're not Persian. You're not going to have a Kurdish government in charge of all the Iranians. It's just not going to happen. They can facilitate the regime's fall, but they can't, once again, facilitate what comes after. And make no mistake, when we're talking about some of these minorities helping us, they aren't doing it on behalf of the Iranian people. They're not saying, time for democracy. They're doing it because they have something they've been promised. And whatever they've been promised is going to lead to post-regime friction. We say, hey, you go do this, and we'll give you this whole part of the earth right here. It's going to be yours. You can call it whatever you want to. And they say, roger that. Go down there and take over or cause a regime to fall. New government comes in and says, that's part of Iran. Get your ass out of here. No, the Americans said it's ours. Well, it's not. Boom. Now you got another fight. So the problem with both these outcomes, whether they fall from the air power or fall from some proxies or whatever, is we can't predict what will follow. It could end up being a completely failed state, or you could have something more fanatical than the mullahs themselves. I mean, imagine somebody taking over this place akin to ISIS or the Taliban and welcoming anybody who hates America to come in and loot the armories and train to kill. And this actually brings up a final problem with both regime change and regime destruction, which we can never predict and never really look at. I call the third man. When you're doing dismounted surveillance out in the world, you're following some guy and you got a team that's following him. Your main focus is to make sure he doesn't know you're following him. So you're laser focused on him as he goes around. You keep him under control, but you don't want him to know you're following. So you're ducking behind windows and you're ducking behind pillars and scooting here and ducking into doorways and things like that, acting kind of goofy. As long as he doesn't know you're following him, you're good as far as you're concerned. Well, then there's a third man out there who sees all your suspicious activity and says, what are those guys doing? Calls the police and says something suspicious going on. Your surveillance is burned. While you were solely focused on the target itself, the third man came in that you didn't predict and ruined everything. When we're fighting Iran right now, we're looking at Iran and saying, what can Iran do to us, and how can you do what can we do to Iran? Can Iran use Hezbollah? Can Iran use the PMUs in Iraq? Is Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq going to come into play? It's all us against Iraq, or us against Iran. But there's always a third man out there that we don't even see coming. We can't even predict it's coming, but it always ends up being horrible. In Iraq with Saddam Hussein, it wasn't Saddam Hussein itself, it ended up being ISIS. ISIS came out of that fight, ended up taking over Mosul, most of Syria, beheading people, burning people alive, scourge of the earth. That came out of our regime change in Iraq, and nobody would have predicted that. When we helped the Mujahideen fight the Soviets in the late 70s, we gave them Stinger missiles. They fought the Soviets in Afghanistan. We ended up kicking the Soviets out. Yay, yay, we did that. The regime fell. We turned our back on Afghanistan and said, so what? Well, the third man that came out of that was Al-Qaeda. As a matter of fact, Hegseth spits on, nation building in Iraq, but in Afghanistan. The absolute reason we were doing nation building in Afghanistan is when we invaded Afghanistan, as we're flying in on helicopters, people are saying, why are we going to Afghanistan again? And they trace the history back and said, oh, the reason we're going to Afghanistan is because we fought the Soviets in '79, caused the regime to fall, and fled. And because we did nothing else, the Taliban came up and they harbored Al-Qaeda. Well, what are we going to do this time? Well, we're going to get Al-Qaeda, but once we get rid of the Taliban, we got to put a government in place that doesn't allow the next generation of Al-Qaeda to grow up here. That's the reason we were doing nation building. It's because we didn't want to go back in 20 years and do it again. Now, yeah, the operational tactical effort failed, but the cause wasn't stupid. It wasn't, ridiculous to do that. We were doing it precisely because we didn't do it before and it caused Al-Qaeda. And I already mentioned for Iran, we installed the Shah in Iran, and the third man ended up being the regime we're fighting right now. I mean, if you look at it, if we could go back in time and to 1953 and say, hey, before you do this regime change, just want to let you know that in 2020, you're going to have a bunch of religious fanatics in charge of this country that are hell-bent on building a nuclear bomb and blowing up both the state of Israel and the United States. And so because of that, we're going to go into a full-out war with them. You still want to do that regime change? You can make an argument that we'd say, no, I guess we'll keep most of that guy. Anyway, regime change takes on a life of its own with outcomes nobody can predict. Creating a failed state in Iran, that'll stop their nuclear ambitions, and that'll stop the ballistic missiles, and that'll stop their helping or support of regional proxies like Hezbollah around the world. But that might not be preferable to what actually follows. Some will scoff at that. Israel would. Israel would care less if it's a smoking slag heap in the ground. They're a very small country. They don't have interests all over the world. That's something they can deal with. And I would have scoffed at it too, but that was before I watched the World Trade Center get destroyed by 7 guys with box cutters. Kicking the Soviets' ass in Afghanistan was a great thing in 1979, but abandoning Afghanistan afterwards directly led to 9/11. There are repercussions that will follow. And I keep hearing everybody saying that it's not us who decides to run Iran. That's up to the Iranians, because we're, by God, not going to do anything that smacks of nation building. But shouldn't it be up to us, since we started this war, to at least prevent the country from falling into a failed state, precisely to prevent arming terrorist groups all over the place. I mean, we're looking at the missiles and the Shahed drones and all this stuff, but everybody's ignoring what else they have. They've got armories full of AK-47s, bazillions of rounds of artillery rounds. They've got man-pads, man-portable air defense weapon systems. They've got mines. They've got, just tons of stuff. And, people bitch about, when the Taliban took over, they got a bunch of U.S. equipment when we left. Well, that pales in comparison to what will happen if Iran falls. You only have to look at Libya. Gaddafi fell, the armories were looted. In 2017 in Niger, we had 4 special forces guys that got ambushed and killed in Niger. Who were they killed by? ISIS offshoots. It came out of Libya after they looted the armories in Libya with Libyan weapons. A failed state in Iran would be a nightmare. I could just imagine 8 years from now where we have a Delta Airlines flying somewhere and it gets brought down by a man-pad, a missile that was looted from Iranian armory and smuggled through a terrorist network. Worst case, if you really want to be, I'm a writer, you want to be, write some really fantastic stuff. Actually, you could read Shadow Strike, my next book. Come to think of it, I'm about to give the plot away. Think if you had a dirty bomb, they got 600 kilograms of uranium they've admitted having, highly enriched uranium. You get a dirty bomb in New York City because it got smuggled out and used somewhere. Anyway, its nightmare fuel is endless if you let that place fall apart, and I just think it's a bad thing. All right, so what do I think is going to happen? What do I think? I'm going to give this in the order of not what I think, the percentage of what it's going to happen, but in the percentage of what I think is good to worse. The best case scenario is Thomas Jefferson wearing Levi's comes out and everybody cheers him on and takes over the country and they love America. I'm going to say that's enough of that because that's not going to happen. I think the most likely option is the regime survives and someone manages to stay alive long enough to take charge and say, no mas, don't bow us up anymore, because we seem hell-bent on killing whoever wants to negotiate with us. They'll capitulate to the U.S. on everything and just say, quit bombing us, we give up. And they'll allow international inspectors in to look at the nuclear stuff, allow international inspectors in to make sure they're not building ballistic missiles. At the same time, they will try to hide stuff. They will do nefarious stuff. They will try to funnel money to proxies. They will try to do whatever nefarious things they can, but they're completely tamped down. They allow us to go in there and do everything under the threat of a further attacks if they don't. And I think that would be a good thing. While they'll no doubt be trying to do nefarious activities, it'll take them decades to be able to project power again. And in that meantime, the world keeps turning. Maybe the regime will fall on its own weight. If we had the ability to actually be inside there looking at what they're doing, that would be the best thing. The second most likely is they run out of missiles, they run out of drones, and they just do this. And we just keep blowing them up until now we're targeting goats and whatever happens to be walking down the street, and we're just blowing up the same thing we blew up before. And they don't capitulate because we're not going to go on the ground and say, you give up. They just sit there and hunker in. And they take the bombs all the way up until the war powers resolution runs out. 60 days go, they don't quit. They still have the monopoly of violence in the country to prevent any kind of uprising. They still have a chain of command. They still have control of the country. They just can't project force out. We hit the end of the 60-day window. Trump knows he will not get approval to continue operations. He doesn't want that egg on his face, and my prediction is he calls it a win, salutes, and we leave. That is not as good as option number one because we wouldn't get the inspectors in. They'll immediately start doing the nefarious stuff again, but they will be set back for decades. So the destruction that we've wrought upon them is good. They won't have their ballistic missiles to threaten Israel. They won't have their ballistic missiles to threaten anybody else. They certainly won't have any nuclear capability, and their ability to help their proxies is damn near non-existent now. So it's not as good as number one, but it's not too bad. The worst option is the regime falls, either through proxies, through air power, through regional actors exploiting it, whatever. And the country devolves straight into civil war. Then you got the loose uranium, man-pads, drones. You got short-range missiles. The armories are all looted. And it's just outfitting whatever bad guys out there. I think that's the worst one to fear. Okay, that sounds like a bunch of doom and gloom. But I'm just exploring what is likely to happen, but not necessarily what exactly will happen. I mean, maybe there is a Thomas Jefferson waiting in the wings, and the people get the government they deserve. One thing I will say for sure is the degradation of ability to project force, either through ballistic missiles or their proxies, and their destruction of nuclear capability, in my mind, is a good thing. They're just an evil regime, and it's a good thing to destroy that stuff. And there are also some ancillary things that will be good. Now, this has nothing to do with the war itself, but it's a second, third order effect, like I was talking about with the third man. There are second and third order effects that could be beneficial. Prior to Hamas attacking Israel on October 7th, KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, was in negotiations to join the Abraham Accords, meaning that KSA would recognize Israel as a legitimate state. They would exchange diplomatic, they'd have embassies, and would recognize their right to exist. This would be a seismic shift in the Middle East. Bahrain's already done it, Morocco did it, UAE did it, but Saudi Arabia, the land of Mecca and Medina, that was the crown jewel. We wanted them to recognize Israel. Everybody else will follow Saudi Arabia, except for Iran, of course. Hamas destroyed that. When Hamas attacked and forced Israel's response, Saudi Arabia backed away from doing anything with that because of the fight that was going on, and I fully believe that was an overriding goal of the attack from the beginning, goaded on by Tehran. Tehran could not have Saudi Arabia recognize Israel. That's the worst thing they wanted, so they had Hamas attack, and they got what they wanted. So Saudi Arabia backed off. Well, now Iran's attacking Saudi Arabia. They're blowing up the oil refineries, blowing up all kinds of stuff in Saudi Arabia. They are driving Saudi Arabia into the arms of Israel and America. And at the end result of that, Iran may get the one thing they didn't want, the religious home of Islam recognizing Israel's right to exist. So there are some good things that come out of this. Third order effect, good things that come out of this, just as much as there could be bad third order effects that come out of this. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. And I hope this explained what's going on to some degree. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.